Revelation's Spiral of Time. My name is Daniel Vallis from InformedChristians.com, a website ministry devoted to discerning current events from a Christian perspective. This is a watch, not a prediction. We are going to be examining the book of Revelation and some of the events of the Tribulation, and because that is in the future, there are speculative aspects to it, but we will be researching it and trying to get a deeper understanding of it. But there are things we do not know, but we should discuss them and brainstorm with each other and share our research with each other, and that is the purpose of this video. Daniel 2:20-22 says, "And he," talking about God, "changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise, and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him." Notice that the passage attributes to God, He is the one who changes the times and the seasons. Mankind can change holidays and special events, but He cannot change time itself or the seasons. Daniel 7:25. "And he," talking about the Antichrist, "shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand, until a time and times and a dividing of time." During the tribulation, the Antichrist will be doing much more than most people think. He will be changing literally time and the laws of nature, things which no man can do. In fact, the passage specifies that God will give him special permission to be able to do this extraordinary thing of manipulating time. He's going to be able to do it for a time and times and a dividing of time. There are many different ways to think of time, but one common way is like a spiral staircase. In traveling on a spiral, there is a circular motion revolving around a center, but it is also combined with a vertical movement. You don't come back to the same place you started, but you come back to a similar place, but further along the spiral. Our constructs of measuring time, such as our calendar and weeks and months and years, are all cyclical. We always come back to a similar place. The beginning of the week, the beginning of the month, the beginning of the year. We always come back to a similar place, but we're in a different place. So think of time as a spiral and moving in a circular motion. Now, when we talk of time and circular motions and cyclical aspects of time, immediately many people think of December 21st, 2012. And that date was promoted and much talked about at the time as being the end of the world. And the reason why it got so much attention was because of the ancient Mayan calendar. The ancient Mayans used a system of calendars based on precise astronomic observation and clever calculation. For them, it was non-linear and repetitive due to the cyclical nature of the earth and their calendars. The calendar system consisted of 3 calendar wheels of time, which all worked together in a cyclical fashion to determine the exact date. There are 3 Mayan calendars: the Tzolk'in calendar, which was a 260-day-long calendar reference for religious rituals. There's the Ab calendar, a 360-day-long calendar with 5 extra days at the end, depending on interpretation, and that made 365 days cycle. And then there was the long count calendar, which measured longer periods of time. The Tzolk'in and Ab interlock with each other to make the calendar round, and the 3 calendars are used simultaneously. So you have a religious calendar going on its own cycle, you have another day calendar going on its cycle, and at the same time you have a long count calendar also going on. While the Tzolk'in and Ab calendars run their respective cycles independent of each other, every 52 years the first day of both the Tzolk'in and Ab calendars would fall on the same day. This day was celebrated as a day of renewal because the cyclical calendars were starting again. A modern equivalent for us would be when there's a new century or the start of a new millennium. There's always extra celebrations. This was true for them too, because every 52 years, certain aspects of the cyclical calendars were starting again. The Mayans had an even longer view of their calendar than the cycle of the Ab and Tzolk'in together. There's a calendar called the long count that was used to record dates over long periods of time. The long count year, called a tune, had 360 days. A period of 20 tunes, which is 7,200 days, is called a ketun, and 20 ketuns is 144,000 days. That is called a bektun. A period of 13 back tunes is called the Great Cycle of the Long Count. It is 5,200 years long in 360-day years. It was this great cycle that would come to an end on what most of us will call December 21st, 2012, the winter solstice. The next great cycle was about to start. The cycle was about to start over again on that date. And that's why it got so much attention, because people were making a big deal of what is the new cycle going to bring. But the Mayan calendar is not the only cyclical calendar in the world. The Hebrew calendar, and others even, are cyclical in nature. And you can have a different solar cycle and a different lunar cycle. You can have more than one calendar going on at the same time, but they will all cycle. An astrolabe, which is used for measuring the stars and taking astronomical measurements, it is also a timepiece also. And it has an undulating cyclical nature to its device, how it works. But it measures the stars, and the Bible even tells us those are for signs and seasons and for telling time. It's all connected. The cyclical nature of our stars and heavens and our world is also tied to time, which is also cyclical. In 2012, they made a big push of a lot of apocalyptic movies, such as 2012, and they were really drumming up the idea of earth changes and major earth changes. 2012 was also when the movie Prometheus came out by the director Ridley Scott, who just recently announced that he's going to be starting a new movie called Alien Covenant. But Prometheus, that was all about alien creators and engineers of mankind and all that stuff. And then right around the time of the December 21st, too, they were also pushing trailers for the Oblivion movie, which dealt with very similar themes, too. So they were pushing a lot at that time period. And of course, that year is also noted for the London 2012 Olympics, which had a lot of occult symbolism in them, emphasizing the phoenix. And all that was pushing for December 21st, 2012 as the end of the world. Well, maybe it was the end of the world, but it hasn't happened yet. The book of Revelation is a very unique book, and it is the revelation of Jesus Christ to John and to the church specifically. It is the one book that is literally dictated by Jesus Christ to the writer. It is not the revelation of John, it is the revelation of Jesus Christ. But there are some very interesting aspects that we want to look at in this book to give us clues of how to understand it. The book of Revelation is really not that long when you read it. And the best way to understand it is really to read it all in one sitting. And you'll get a much better scope and idea of it all. But we can see that it starts out at the beginning with the introduction. And then it goes straight into the letters to the churches. And this is something Christians, we need to always keep in mind. The book of Revelation is not written for the lost person. It is written for Christians. And it's a warning and exhortation and encouragement to those Christ loves. So there are the letters to the churches in chapters 2 and 3. And then in the exact physical middle of the book is also Revelation 12, which describes the midpoint of the tribulation. And the break between chapter 11 and 12 is also the physical middle of the book as well. Then toward the end there is post-tribulation and millennium information talking about the judgment's day before the throne and heaven and eternal life. And then there is the conclusion. In between these sections is what we call the Tribulation Period. It's a very apocalyptic time that Christ is warning the church about. And at the very end of the letters to the churches, he finishes, "He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches." And then it says, "After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. And immediately I was in the Spirit." This verse is unique because it mentions specifically a door opening in heaven and people being called up hither. Another place is also in the midpoint. In chapter 11, the two witnesses are called up to heaven. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. And then at the end, there is another mention of heaven opening. And I saw heaven opened, and behold a white horse. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood. And his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. there are 3 different points in the tribulation which many people wonder about. And many people have different views of when Christ will return for his bride, the church. This letter was written to the churches, and each letter, he's always reminding them that he is coming quickly. So the question we should ask ourselves is to best understand the book of Revelation and to best apply the letters of the Revelation. We need to know, when is he coming? Which of these 3 points is he coming at? Because that will determine how we interpret the entire book. Well, the midpoint, that one's easy to understand because, as you could see in the verse, and even if you read the chapter 11, that is talking only about the 2 witnesses, and only they are called up to heaven. It's not talking about anybody else, makes no reference of any other groups or any other activity going on besides the 2 witnesses being raised from the dead and them being called to heaven. And the verse specifies several times it's for them, so we can discount the middle. But when we think of Christ's warnings where he says, I come quickly, for the disciples and the apostles, that would automatically remind them of when Jesus himself told them he would be coming back. In Matthew 24 and Luke 17, 4 different times he told them exactly when he will be coming back. He told them he'd be coming back in the days of Noah. That is when the coming of the Son of Man will be. And also, the coming of the Son of Man will be. And also, the days of the Son of Man. And in the days of Noah is when the Son of Man will be revealed. The world is going to see the Son of Man. He is going to be coming in the days of Noah. And Jesus Christ gave them a checklist also, so that they knew exactly what days of Noah he was talking about. He said that they'll be eating and drinking, partying, basically, buying and selling, marrying, planting, building, and we also know from other passages too that there's going to be a great increase in wickedness. But generally, people will be living as though life goes on. They have no concern of apocalypse because it hasn't happened yet. Life goes on. They have an anticipation of the future. And Jesus Christ told his disciples that is when the coming of the Son of Man will be, and that is when he is revealed. So in the letters to the 7 churches, when he says he is coming quickly, that automatically tells us that he is coming right before judgment comes, right before the tribulation period comes. And that also means it's coming right before it starts. Some people have the idea that true tribulation or Jesus won't come till the midpoint, but that's not correct because that would invalidate the checklist he gave his disciples. He told them in the days of Noah, when they're doing all this stuff, living as though life goes on, that is when Christ is coming and when he is going to be revealed. And you don't have to read too far into the events of the tribulation, even on the 2nd page. Once the tribulation events start, already 2 billion people have died. The party's over. Once the tribulation starts, people are going to know it. There's not going to be any confusion. You're going to see it on all the news. There's going to be people dying real quick in very large numbers, millions every day, once the tribulation starts. Christ is coming before, right before that happens though. He is coming for his bride, those who are ready, those who are wise, those who are watching. But he is also coming at the end of the tribulation. But in that instance, there is no mention of him calling up any of his children. There is no gathering at that point. Notice the armies described there. That is not the bride of Christ. You can read through the Old Testament and it describes the army of God, who are the angels. And you do just a simple Bible search and you could find that the angels are described wearing linen, white linen, and pure linen. This army that he's coming with are the angels. It's not the bride of Christ. So Christ is coming and he will be revealed to gather his watching bride, those who are wise and watching, at the beginning of the tribulation. Those who are foolish and not paying attention or living like he is returning, they will be caught unawares. They'll be caught by surprise because they were living for a future that did not exist. Because they were not paying attention, they were not watching, they were not living for their Lord. But not all Christians will be called up hither. The Bible tells us in Matthew 24:46 through 51, Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The tribulation period is where he's going to be appointed to. If you do not live like Christ is returning and live like your Lord and Master is returning, then you will be appointed with the hypocrites. Those who can play Christian, those who can play church. The hypocrites, Christians, will be left here during the tribulation. They will be tried and purified because they did not heed the letters of the 7 churches, where Christ told them, do this before I come. If you don't cleanse and purify your life before he comes, then you're going to be left here to have it done during the tribulation. And there's going to be much weeping and gnashing of teeth. The hypocrite Christians will be here during the tribulation as well. Luke 12:42-46 further expounds on this. Blessed is that servant whom his Lord when he cometh shall find so doing. Of a truth I say unto you that he will make him ruler over all that he hath. But and if that servant say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to beat the men servants and maidens, and to eat and drink and to be drunken, the Lord of that servant will come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him asunder, and will appoint him his portion with the unbelievers. Notice he's talking about his servants, Christ's servants. If you do not live like Christ is coming back, then you will be stuck with the unbelievers during the tribulation, because you did not heed his exhortations in the letters to the 7 churches. Verse 47, and that servant which knew his Lord's will, and prepared not himself. But let me just pause here for a moment. A lot of good Christians prepare for the apocalypse and the tribulation, and they expect to be here during the tribulation. That's not what Christ calls us to prepare for. Yes, we should prudently prepare for disasters and unforeseen things that happen, but Christ does not call us to prepare for the tribulation. He calls us to prepare ourselves, our hearts, so that we are where we're supposed to be, so we're the Christian servant and ambassador that we're supposed to be. That's what Christ calls us to prepare. And if you're not doing that, then you are focusing on the wrong tangent right now. And that servant which knew his Lord's will, and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. But he that knew not and did commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required. And to whom men have committed much of him they will ask the more. Beaten with many stripes. The hypocrite Christians who get left here during the tribulation with the unbelievers, they're going to be weeping and gnashing, and they're going to be beating themselves over the head many times. These stripes are going to be self-inflicted because they realize they did not live for Christ or heed his warnings that he gave in the letters to the 7 churches. They did not do their Lord's will. Are you doing your Lord's will of preparing yourself and living for your Lord and Master, or are you living for yourself? There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The book of Revelation is the warning to the believers. I hope you have an ear to hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches.